Hello again, everyone. Edwin Leonard back once again. In this YouTube astrological segment, I'm going to be dissertating and talking about Venus transiting the third house in a natal chart. Now, on average, say your house is average size 30 degrees, Venus will transit that house for approximately 25 days around that time, and that is now as long as Venus is direct only during that transit. However, if your house is bigger and or Venus is in retrograde motion at any point during that transit, it will be longer. Now, well, first thing I'll look at when Venus is transiting the third house, this could be a period where, as far as say like neighbors go, you might be less confrontational in this period if there's somebody doing something, making noise, it being boisterous in your community. You're have to be more passive with them. You're more about peace, more about tranquility. This could be a period where perhaps look at Venus being about peace. This could indicate amicable relationship with your siblings if you have any. This could be Venus is also about money, so it could indicate that maybe you might be more apt to maybe spend money on something connected with transportation, your local transportation, say your car, for example. Maybe you might buy a vehicle or you might get something connected with it. It might be some kind of stereo for it that maybe or some kind of speakers that you wanted for a while and you procrastinated on because you didn't have the funds maybe available, but now might be a more auspicious time for that. This could be perhaps maybe you might spend money on a sibling or something, a neighbor that's a good friend perhaps, or maybe you might benefit monetarily from a sibling and or a neighbor, especially if Venus is making, say, a lot of good aspects, and especially maybe, let's say it's making a sextile or trine to your natal Jupiter. This could be something where you might be attracted maybe to, if you're unattached and you don't have that significant other, you may be attracted maybe perhaps to someone that might be very communicative, might be very verbose, might be very eloquent, someone that might be intellectual, a person that it requires a lot of intellectual stimulation. It could be somebody connected in a communications field. It could be something with maybe, for example, media relations or broadcasting, someone that's a writer, journalist, online blogger, data or satellite communications, for example. This could be a period too when you look at Venus making the transit into one's third house. This could be a time for short journeys, perhaps that are very peaceful and ones that you really enjoy and love. You might be expressing more of a greater love if you have any siblings than you ordinarily do. And also perhaps for neighbors as well, you might be showing them a little bit more friendliness and maybe more kindness and benevolence during this period than you do ordinarily. This could be a time where you might really enjoy some kind of intellectual or mental stimulation. You might like to, maybe you decide you want to buy things that are connected with something as far as maybe increase what you feel might increase the intellect or challenge the mind, like a game of Haiku, for example, or some brain teasers, or some kind of like variety puzzle book, the game Haiku, something where you feel that you might be challenged, where it will challenge your mind. That could be a possibility here. This could be also something where you may you look at Venus and you look at the third house, and Venus is about love, and the third house is strongly connected with communication. So this could be something where you have these two things are very strongly connected. It can show a great love, a more of a love for communication right now, and it might be something you feel you're enamored with. And it could mean too that you find with your communications, maybe it leads, maybe somehow this is somehow tied in to, maybe if you don't have, say, a significant other, this could somehow be connected with maybe somebody that you may meet. The Venus in the third house could also be a time where you're able to incorporate a lot of tact and diplomacy into your communications. This could be a period, even if your chart suggests that you're that you're somewhat brusque or outspoken and blunt in speech, you might hold back a little bit more in this period than usual and be very pleasant and amiable in the way you speak. And this could be a strong possibility as far as this transit goes. And in any way, it's also important to look at the sign that Venus is in during this transit to the third house, as this could flavor the transit. Now, let's say, for example, that Venus is in Leo for either the majority or the whole time of the transit to the third house. Well, Venus in Leo, when this transit happens, it could indicate extravagance and perhaps spending perhaps an exorbitant amount of money on things, at least more so than usual. And it's possible that this might be perhaps with neighbors and siblings, and you might show a lot of perhaps generosity with them during this time as far as money goes. And you might express a lot of dignity and pride in matters connected with love in the way and as far as your love toward perhaps siblings in communication and perhaps neighbors as well. Well, another example is, let's say that Venus is in Virgo for either the majority or the whole time of the transit to the third house. Well, this could indicate that you might feel really strong about being maybe of service, this love of service perhaps to siblings and neighbors. And it could indicate perhaps a strong love is something that you enjoy. You might show strong love of analytical communication during this time. Well, it's also important to look at the aspects that are made to your natal planets and points from this transit during the transit, as this could impact the transit. Now, let's say, for example, that transiting Venus in the third house is making a square in conjunct or opposition to your natal Mars. Well, this could indicate, despite maybe attempt, maybe it's some peaceful communications, it might indicate you might have some acrimonious ones during that time when it makes that square to Mars, and it could be perhaps with loved ones in this example. Now, let's say, for another example, let's say that transiting Venus in your third house is making a sextile or trine to your natal Jupiter. This could be auspicious perhaps for maybe expanding peaceful, amicable communications, being the fact that Venus would be in the third. That's where the peaceful and amicable communications come in. And perhaps and it could indicate maybe you wind up, it could be favorable or auspicious for getting that money to take maybe some cruise or some excursion and going on some long journey, and maybe that money is somehow maybe tied into someone you know, as far as maybe a sibling or a neighbor perhaps, for example. So anyway, people, that'll conclude this YouTube astrological segment for Venus transiting the third house in a natal chart. And stay tuned next time, where I'll be dissertating and talking about Venus transiting the fourth house in a natal chart. Two things I want to get with you on before I head out. Firstly, the stars may impel but do not compel. And secondly, never isolate any single astrological element, aspect, planetary placement, position, configuration, influence, or what have you, and make an analysis of a person, astrologically speaking, based on this alone, because astrologically speaking, the person is the sum of all their components in their natal chart and not just one. Until next time, people, stay well.